The tornado siren in Garrison, Nebraska is only supposed to sound when a storm is coming. The night it screamed under a clear sky line, 3 people died, including one who was already buried. My name is Daniel Hayes, and for 5 years I worked as a 911 dispatcher for Clay County. That's the flat part of Nebraska, miles of corn, straight highways, grain elevators, a water tower every few towns, and long stretches where the loudest thing you hear is the wind passing over the fields. You learn to respect sirens out here. They aren't like city sirens. A city siren is for everything: ambulances, police, fire trucks, noise on top of noise. Out here, when the big mechanical horns on the tower start to wail, you know the sky is about to come down. At least, that's what I used to think. It started on a Tuesday in late October, about 2:17 a.m. We were in that dead stretch of the shift when the bars have long been closed and even the drunks have either passed out or sobered up. Weather radar on my second monitor was clear. Just a clean sweep of green and yellow counties with no storms forming anywhere near us. My partner that night, Jen, was half dozing over a Sudoku. The police radio mumbled low in the background. Then underneath everything, I heard it. A siren, far away but not that far. At first I thought I imagined it. The air vents in the dispatch center sometimes hummed in a way that made you think you were hearing something else. But it kept climbing. That familiar rising and falling mechanical howl, like a giant metal throat opening up over the town. Jen's head went up. "You hear that?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, eyes going straight to the weather radar. It was still clear. No storms, no alerts, no red polygons or warning boxes. Nothing. The siren's muffled cry seeped through the concrete walls, long and low. Then, as suddenly as it started, it cut out mid-wail, just stopped. No slow decline, no power down, just a clean slice of silence. Like somebody had unplugged it with a knife. Jen frowned, spinning in her chair toward the bank of status lights that showed each town's emergency systems: fire, EMS, sirens. Garrison was one of the tiny green dots in the middle row. All those little LEDs were solid. No faults, no test signals. "You got anything on your side?" she asked. I checked my console. The system logs all activations of the tornado sirens in our county. Test, weather, manual override. Everything gets time-stamped. Nothing. No entry. No signal. "The board says it never went off," I said. Jen chewed the inside of her cheek. "Maybe some idiot flipped a local test switch?" That was possible, technically. Some of the older towns had manual activation for their towers, locked inside fire stations or municipal buildings. There were procedures, but not everyone in these towns cared about procedures as much as they cared about the fact that their kid's cousin had the key. "This late?" I muttered. "For 17 seconds?" She shrugged and went back to her Sudoku. We logged it as a possible misfire and moved on. If it had just been that one night, I'd have forgotten it. 3 days later, the siren went off again. The second time, I was alone. It was a Friday night, around 11:50 p.m. The high school football games had ended, so we'd already handled the usual flurry of calls: drunk teens, a minor fender bender, a missing pie that always ran away during home games. Then all the lines went quiet. I remember looking at the radar again out of habit. A small line of storms was forming way west, but it wasn't projected to reach us until morning. As I watched the colors on the radar inch across the screen, the siren started. Not faint, not far. This time it was clearer, like it had moved closer to us, like the air itself vibrated with it. I could feel it in my chest, this dull, metallic moan that rose and fell. It lasted longer too. 30 seconds. 40, maybe a full minute. My hand hovered over the radio. If it was a weather activation, someone at the sheriff's office or the highway patrol would be talking about it. But the airwaves stayed quiet. The Garrison light on the board stayed beautifully, stubbornly green. No activation log, no explanation. Then right near the end of the wail, my phone line lit up. 911, line 2. I jammed the headset tighter over my ear and hit accept. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, all I heard was the siren, fainter over the phone, but still there, still screaming in the distance. Then a woman's voice cut in, breathless and angry. "It's doing it again," she snapped. "You said it was fixed." "Ma'am, can you tell me your location?" I asked, default training kicking in. "Garrison," she said, "by the water tower. You people told me last week it was a glitch. You said it was off. It's not off. It wakes me up every damn night." I stared at the glowing green dot that said Garrison. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Evelyn Marsh," she said. "And I'm tired of being the only one who hears your damn siren." Only one, then. That phrasing lodged in my brain like a splinter. "The only one was?" I repeated. Evelyn scoffed. "My neighbor says he doesn't hear a thing. The guy across the street says I'm imagining it. Nobody else in this town hears it. Just me. And you people sit over there and tell me it's off." I looked at the status lights again. No faults, no siren test, no weather alert. "Ma'am, I can hear a siren right now over the phone," I said carefully. "You're saying your neighbors can't?" She let out a bitter, scared little laugh. "Of course you can hear it. Of course you can. Every night since..." She cut herself off so abruptly I thought the call had dropped. "Since what?" I prompted. The siren outside rose to an almost painful pitch, then cut out mid-cry, just like the first time. Silence collapsed around us. "Since my husband died," she said quietly. 2 weeks ago. Heart attack. In his truck, right under that damn tower. Now every night, right before midnight, your siren screams and no one believes me." Her voice shook now, anger slipping into fear. "Please," she said, "shut it off. I can't sleep. I can't think." I swallowed. "Mrs. Marsh, we're not showing any activation on our end," I said, "but I'll send someone out to check the equipment, okay? We'll have an officer drive by tonight." She didn't sound comforted, but she agreed. I took her address, noted the complaint, and called the on-duty deputy. Deputy Collins sounded tired. "We've had this lady call us 3 times already," he said. "We went out there. The siren's offline. No one else hears a thing. She's grieving, that's all." "Humor me," I said. "Just swing by and sit there a few minutes." He sighed. "Fine, but you owe me a coffee." He never made it to Garrison. 15 minutes later, the highway patrol found his cruiser upside down in a drainage ditch about 2 miles outside of town. No other cars in sight. It looked like he'd swerved hard at something, overcorrected, and rolled. He died at the scene. The official report said he probably fell asleep at the wheel. I tried to believe that. Over the next month, the calls kept coming. Not a flood, not every night, just often enough that it never left my mind. Always the same things, always from the town of Garrison, always late at night, sometime between 11:30 p.m. and 3 o'clock a.m., always during clear or calm weather. No storms, no tests, nothing scheduled, always from one person at a time. Sometimes it was Evelyn again, the widow by the water tower. Sometimes it was a college kid driving through on his way back to Lincoln, pulled over on the shoulder, swearing the siren had started as soon as he passed the faded "Welcome to Garrison" sign. Sometimes it was a long-haul trucker who only stopped there because his hours were up and the truck stop at the exit had an empty spot. They all said the same thing. "This siren won't stop. Why isn't anyone else waking up? It's so loud. How can they sleep through this?" Every time they called, I could hear it too, through the headset, faint but clear. Yet our board never showed an activation. Our logs never filled with timestamps. No weather alerts, no test codes. I started tracking it on my own. A notebook in my locker, hidden under a spare uniform shirt. Every time someone from Garrison called about the siren, I wrote it down. Date, time, caller name, where they were exactly when they heard it. Within a couple of weeks, a pattern started to form. The siren didn't care about the day of the week. It didn't care if the caller was young, old, local, or passing through. It cared about where they were standing. Every caller had been within direct line of sight of the water tower. Stand behind a building, behind a row of trees, down in the low ground, and nothing. Silent town, sleeping neighbors. Stand where you could clearly see the old white tower with Garrison stenciled on the side, and you might hear the siren. If you were the one it chose that night. The last column in my notebook was something I added later when the pattern sharpened from creepy to horrifying. Outcome. Because very quickly I realized something else. Within 7 days of hearing the siren, every caller I spoke to from Garrison had either been in a serious accident, suffered a life-threatening event, or simply disappeared. No one listed siren on the reports. Why would they? There was always something else. A rollover crash, a sudden stroke, a missing person case that never got enough attention. I was the only one who saw their names in my notebook and in the reports. The only one who knew they'd all called about the same thing. The siren. I might have convinced myself I was connecting random dots, dispatchers burnout, seeing patterns where there weren't any, if not for what I found in the storage room. It was a slow Sunday afternoon. No calls, no storms, nothing. Jen was on break. I was bored and restless. So I went into the back room to dig for an older incident form I needed for a training example. The storage shelves were stacked with dusty boxes of old paper logs, reports from before everything went digital. Clay County isn't exactly rich, so there's no fancy climate-controlled archive. Just metal shelves, cardboard boxes, and the faint smell of mold and old toner. I dragged a box labeled Garrison, 1993-97 down from the top shelf. I wasn't looking for anything specific about Garrison at first, but my eyes landed on the town's name. That stupid white water tower flashed through my mind, and I thought, why not? Maybe there was something there. I pulled out files and skimmed. Small structure fires, traffic stops, a tornado that barely missed town in 95, a gas station robbery, a few domestic disputes. Then I found a thin manila folder with no printed label, just a handwritten note in blue pen. Garrison, siren failure. I froze, folder halfway out of the box. When I opened it, 3 things fell into my lap. An incident report form dated June 12, 1994. A yellowing photograph of Garrison's water tower and attached siren array. A newspaper clipping from the Clay County Herald. The incident report was brief, factual, almost cold. Severe thunderstorm and possible tornado passed near Garrison at approximately 2:40 a.m. Power fluctuations reported. No siren activation recorded. Minor structural damage. 1 barn destroyed. 1 farmhouse partially flooded. At the bottom, in a different pen and handwriting, someone had added, unconfirmed fatality. Marsh family? See separate file. There was no separate file in the box. The newspaper clipping helped fill the gap. It was a small article, buried on what must have been page 3 or 4 back then. Local family dies in flooding. Heavy rains overnight are believed to have contributed to flash flooding along Mill Creek outside of Garrison, where Earl and Lucy Marsh and their 2 young children were found dead in their vehicle early Sunday morning. Authorities say the family appears to have been caught by rising water as they tried to cross the usually shallow creek. It went on with the usual background. Good church-going folks, tragedy, community in mourning. Nowhere in the article did it mention that the town's siren never went off that night. Nowhere did it mention a siren failure. I turned the incident form over and noticed something faintly embossed on the back, left there by the pressure of somebody's pen as they'd written on a sheet over it. Tilting it toward the fluorescent light, I could just barely make out the words, like a ghost of ink. Don't put this in the paper. Town can't afford the lawsuit. No signature, no initials. I thought of Evelyn Marsh calling us from under that water tower, saying nobody believed her about the siren. I thought of the date on the article, 1990, if those Marshes were her husband's family, if they died because the siren failed. Maybe she wasn't just a grieving widow hearing things. Maybe she'd been listening for that siren her whole life, waiting for it to finally work. It all came to a head the week before Thanksgiving. By then, I'd had 7 separate callers from Garrison report hearing the siren, 4 serious accidents, and 1 missing person report that started and ended in that town. I'd also developed a habit. Anytime I saw Garrison on the caller ID, my stomach clenched. That particular night was bitterly cold. Clear sky, the kind of dry, sharp wind that cuts right through jackets and makes the stars feel closer somehow. The shift had been quiet. Too quiet. It was around 1 o'clock a.m. when the first call came in. 911, what's your emergency? A man's voice, shaky. Is there a tornado coming? The siren's going off. Where are you located, sir? Garrison, I was just closing up at the gas station. Everyone's phones are going off, but there's nothing on the weather app. My wife says the TV isn't saying anything either. My heart stuttered. Everyone's phones, I repeated. Everyone can hear the siren? He sounded confused. Of course they can. It's loud as hell. Whole town's awake, man. Nobody's saying what's going on. That was new. Until that night, it had always chosen one. Hold on, I said. Stay inside. I'm checking the weather desk right now. I threw the weather radar up on the big screen. Nothing. Nothing anywhere near us. The nearest storms were 3 states away. But through the man's phone, I could hear the siren, clear and monstrous. This time it didn't sound distant. It sounded like it was screaming directly into my skull. I yanked my headset off for a second, heart pounding. Even without the headphones, I could hear it, muffled but unmistakable, bleeding through the concrete and rebar of our building. What the hell? Jen muttered under her breath, eyes huge. I slapped the headset back on. Sir, listen to me, I said to the caller. The National Weather Service isn't showing anything. There are no tornado warnings. I need you to stay calm. There was a loud bang on his end of the line, like a door slamming open. Hey, someone shouted in the background. They say there's no tornado. The man choked out a nervous laugh. Whole town's in the parking lot looking at the sky, he said. This is crazy. He wasn't exaggerating. Over the next 2 minutes, our lines lit up. 6 calls, then 12, then more, all from Garrison, and all of them asking the same question. Where's the tornado? Why is the siren going off? Is this some kind of drill? Is it an attack? I did the only thing I knew how to do. I fell back on procedure. Shelter in place, I told them. Go to your basements, interior rooms. Stay away from windows until we can verify. Behind me, one of the senior dispatchers was on the phone with the county emergency manager, asking if someone local had manually triggered the siren. No, I heard him say. The console's dark. State's not showing anything. No one flipped it from our side. Jen stared at her screen. Dan, she whispered, Garrison's siren system is still marked as offline. There's no power draw. But I could hear it. We could all hear it. And this time it didn't cut out. It didn't stutter and die. It rose and fell, a relentless mechanical howl that felt like it was peeling the sky back. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. People in Garrison started calling back. My ears are ringing. My baby won't stop screaming. How do I shut it off? Tell me how to shut it off. And at some point, without consciously deciding to, I grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? Jen demanded. To Garrison, I said. If the system says the siren is off and the whole town hears it anyway, then something is wrong with the tower itself. I need to see it. You're not a field tech, she snapped. Or a cop. She was right. I wasn't. But I was the one with the notebook full of names and times and outcomes. I was the one who had Evelyn Marsh calling me from under that tower, night after night, saying nobody believed her. I was the one who'd read about a Marsh family dying because the siren stayed silent in '94. I couldn't just sit there. Cover my lines, I said. I'll keep my radio on. She swore under her breath but didn't try to stop me again. The drive to Garrison usually takes about 25 minutes from the dispatch center. That night, I made it in 18. The whole way there, I could hear the siren, even with the windows up and the heater rattling. It sounded wrong at that distance, too loud, too clear. Like the air itself was carrying it straight to my ears, no matter where I went. The closer I got, the more the sound thickened. It stopped being a noise I heard and became something I felt, pressed against my teeth, my sinuses, my eyes. The town itself looked wrong too. Garrison is small, a few hundred people at most. One row of businesses in Maine, gas station, diner, tiny post office, bar, and a hardware store. Grain elevator, church, water tower. Tonight, every house was lit up. People stood on porches and driveways in the street, all looking up at the sky like they expected to see a funnel drop at any second. But the sky was crystal clear. I could see the Milky Way. No clouds, no lightning, just stars. And above it all, the water tower, skeletal against the sky. The siren array, a cluster of horn-shaped speakers, sat on a steel frame near the top. It was screaming, but it wasn't moving. I've seen sirens in storms before. When they sound, the head usually rotates, a slow mechanical scan of the horizon. This one was locked in place. The horns pointed straight at the ground, like it had bent down to howl directly into the town's face. I parked at the curb near the Marsh house, the address I'd written so many times in my notebook. Evelyn was already outside, gray hair whipping in a wind that wasn't really there, robe fluttering around her legs. "You came," she said, like she'd been expecting me. "How long has it been going?" I shouted over the endless wail. She glanced at the sky like checking a clock. 45 minutes, she said. Maybe more. "Anybody hurt?" "Not yet," she said, "not this time." That phrase dug under my skin. "Stay inside," I told her. "I'm going to try to get to the base of the tower." She gave me a look that was half pity, half resignation. "You can't shut it off," she said. "Not from here." I ignored her and made for the chain-link fence around the tower's base. Up close, the noise became an assault. My eyes watered, my chest squeezed. The soles of my boots seemed to buzz against the frozen ground. The gate wasn't locked. That bothered me more than it should have. I stepped through and put a hand on the support column. It vibrated so hard I could feel it in my shoulder. I stared up into the screaming metal mouth of the siren. Then my radio crackled. "Dan, you copy?" Jen's voice warped slightly by static. "You at Garrison yet?" "Yeah," I said, pressing the transmit button with shaking fingers. "I'm under the tower. The sirens, it's..." I struggled for a word that didn't sound crazy. "Wrong." "There's nothing on the board," she said. "Nothing at the state. No way to shut it off from here. The emergency manager says it has to be a local mechanical fault. He wants you to..." She broke off abruptly. "Jen," I said, "repeat." "You cut out." When her voice returned a second later, it didn't sound like her. It was lower, slower, like someone was speaking through her, using her mouth as a placeholder. "It's not for storms." The hair on my arms stood up. "Who is this?" I whispered. The voice on the radio laughed softly, a dry, rusted sound. "You've been listening, Daniel, writing in your little book, counting the ones it called." I looked up at the siren. In the flickering sodium light from the nearest street lamp, the metal horns seemed almost too dark, like they weren't reflecting the light quite right. "Who are you, oh?" I asked again more firmly. "You know who I am," the voice said. "You found my name in the old file." My mouth went dry. "Earl Marsh?" I guessed. The siren's pitch shifted, rising a fraction higher, drilling into my skull. "They didn't turn it on for us," the voice said. "Clouds black as ink, creek already high, my wife begging me to wait." I kept looking up at the tower thinking, if it was that bad, they'd sound the siren. They didn't. Town clerk said later he didn't want to scare anyone, didn't want to panic, didn't want the liability if something went wrong with the system and it wouldn't shut off. So it stayed silent. We didn't. I stumbled back a step, knuckles white around the radio. "Why now?" I shouted, half to the radio, half to the screaming metal above me. "Why all these people? Why Evelyn? Why the truckers? The deputy?" "It learned," the voice said, "what it was supposed to do. Warn, it doesn't know the difference between storms and everything else that kills you. It only knows danger. Flood, crash, heart that stops while you're alone in your truck. It calls for the ones who won't see it coming until it's too late." My heart hammered in my chest. "You mean everyone who hears it," I swallowed, "dies?" "Everyone who ignores it," the voice corrected. "Everyone who stands under it, looking up, saying, if it was that bad, they'd sound the siren." "They did, Daniel. You just kept telling them it was off." Images flashed in my head. Deputy Collins, upside down in a ditch. The college kid whose car was later found wrapped around a tree just outside town. The trucker whose rig was pulled out of a frozen pond. The missing woman whose body they never found. All of them had called. All of them had heard the siren. All of them had been told, in some way, "There's no storm, it's a glitch." The siren cut off, not slowly, not gradually, just off. The silence hit like a slap. My ears rang, filling the space it left behind. For a moment, Garrison was the quietest place on earth. Then I heard the first scream. It came from somewhere behind me, deeper in town. I spun around, heart jumping, and saw motion down Main Street. People running, pointing, colliding in confusion. Then above the rooftops, I saw the glow. Not orange like fire, white-blue, harsh, electric. I ran toward it, my boots pounding the frozen sidewalk. The glow was coming from the far side of town near the grain elevator, the oldest one made of gray concrete and rusted steel. I rounded the corner and skidded to a stop. The elevator and the small fertilizer plant next to it were lit up like a second sun had fallen to earth. A delivery tanker had jackknifed through the chain-link fence, slamming into one of the main storage tanks at a bad angle. The impact had sheared a pipe, and a white vapor was pouring out, hugging the ground, rolling in a cold, deadly blanket toward the closer houses. People were already coughing, backing away, some dropping to their knees. Ammonia, I thought numbly. Or worse. I slapped my radio. "Hazmat," I shouted. "We need hazmat in Garrison now." "Tanker strike at the co-op, possible chemical leak. Evacuate in a 1-mile radius, get..." Something in my throat cinched tight. I couldn't breathe. The invisible edge of the vapor cloud had already reached us. My eyes burned. The air tasted like metal and rot. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get higher, to get inside, anywhere away from the low, creeping wow. Behind me, doors were slamming. People shouting, crying, stumbling. And in the middle of it all, calm and infuriatingly logical, my dispatcher brain whispered, if the siren had stayed off, how many people would still be asleep in their homes, with their windows open, directly downwind? The siren hadn't been a threat. The siren had been mercy. It had dragged the whole town out of their beds, out of the direct path of the first densest wave of gas. It had given them a chance, and we tried to turn it off. My chest burned. I dropped to one knee, vision tunneling. Through the blur, I saw a shape cutting through the gas, a figure in a bathrobe and boots, moving like she'd been here before. Evelyn Marsh. She grabbed my arm and hauled me to my feet with surprising strength. "Up," she shouted, or maybe I just imagined the word. "Uphill, now." She dragged me toward a low rise on the edge of town, away from the elevator, away from the glowing lights and white vapor. Each step was like trying to run in a nightmare, my lungs screaming, my legs rubbery. By the time we reached the rise, my vision had faded to static. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me was the sirens starting up again. Not from the tower, from everywhere, from the radios, from inside my skull. I woke up in a hospital in Lincoln with an oxygen mask over my face and a headache that felt like someone had stuffed my skull with broken glass. A state trooper stood at the foot of my bed. A nurse hovered nearby, eyes watchful but tired. "How many?" I croaked, voice raw. The trooper frowned. "How many what?" "Garrison," I said. "How many died?" He hesitated. "Fewer than we expected," he said finally. "The driver of the tanker didn't make it. One older gentleman with asthma. A few in critical condition. But honestly, dispatch did good. You guys got everybody awake and moving before the leak." I closed my eyes, thinking of the siren that wasn't on. "How long did it go off?" I asked. He frowned. "How long did what go off?" "The siren," I said. "How long was it sounding before the crash?" He pulled out a small notebook, flipped a page. "According to the county logs and the power company, the Garrison siren system has been offline since 1994, he said. Mechanical failure after a storm. They never properly fixed it, just wrote it up and moved on. You didn't know that?" I just stared at him. "No tests?" I asked weakly. "No, nothing." "Not in the last 20 years, he said. "The county uses mobile alerts and radio now. The hardware's just decoration." In the corner of the room, the heart monitor beeped steadily. Beep, 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 soft, regular, comforting. Underneath it, so faint I thought I might be imagining it, I heard another sound, a rising, falling mechanical wail. I looked at the trooper sharply. "You don't hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" I almost laughed. Of course he didn't. They say I inhaled enough ammonia to cause some cognitive disruption. That's the polite phrase they used when I started telling people the siren talks. They pulled my dispatch certification for my own good when I kept insisting we needed to write a different kind of warning into the procedures. If anyone reports hearing a siren in Garrison when there are no storms on radar, don't tell them it's a glitch. Don't tell them they're crazy. Tell them, run. They didn't put that in the manual. Can't blame them. It sounds insane. So instead I moved, sold my house, left Clay County, got as far from Nebraska as I could without leaving the Midwest entirely. Thought maybe if I put enough miles between me and that white water tower, the sound would finally stop. It didn't. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I'll wake up with my heart racing, ears straining, absolutely certain I can hear it again. Not loud, not full, just the idea of a siren, half formed in the back of my skull. I've checked the weather more times than I can count. Clear, always clear. I used to think that meant I was safe. Now I'm not so sure, because I finally understood something that night in Garrison, crawling away from that gas cloud, lungs on fire, Evelyn dragging me uphill. The siren isn't tied to one tower anymore. It learned its job there, sure. Learned what too late feels like. Learned what it means to fail. But warnings don't stay local. They spread, they echo, they travel in stories. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, in a dark bedroom in Omaha, on your phone in a truck stop off I-80, in a farmhouse miles from the nearest neighbor, pay attention. The next time you hear a siren wail under a clear, empty sky, no storms on the radar, no alerts on your phone, nobody else seems bothered. Don't be like the clerk in '94 worrying about panic. Don't be like I was, telling caller after caller it was just a glitch. Get up, go, move, leave, because this time it isn't sounding for them, it's sounding for you.